Welcome to today's Explainer. So today we're setting the stage for a seriously eye-opening deep dive into something I can almost guarantee you've experienced, even if you couldn't quite put your finger on what it was. We're going to decode those hidden, kind of awkward reactions people sometimes have to our personal victories. It's a wildly fascinating look into human psychology. Let's decode it.
Okay, picture this. You've finally hit a goal you've been grinding toward for months. Maybe you snagged that big promotion, took the leap and started a new business, or just crushed a major fitness milestone. You're absolutely buzzing with excitement, right? And you run to the first person you can find to tell them. But as you're sharing the news, you get this look from your friend that makes your stomach just instantly drop. I mean, they say all the right words. They say, "Oh, wow, congratulations." But something in their eyes just doesn't match the words coming out of their mouth.
If you've ever walked away from sharing a huge win feeling, well, more lonely and confused than you did before you opened your mouth, hear this. You are not being paranoid, and you are definitely not being too sensitive. What you just witnessed is a very real, scientifically backed reaction. And today, we're going to break down exactly what you saw and why it actually happens.
Now, most of us have been taught to watch how someone acts when we're in trouble, right? Like, we think that's the ultimate test of friendship, but we actually need to compare that to how they act when you are winning. Look, while loyalty in hard times is absolutely vital, the real truth, the truest indicator of who is actually standing in your corner, often comes out when you're the one succeeding.
Moving into Section 1, the 1-second face, the biological leak of envy.
So what we're talking about today is known as the win test. It relies heavily on what pioneering psychologist Paul Ekman identified as microexpressions. These are those tiny, split-second biological reactions that happen right before a person can consciously control their facial muscles. Because here's the reality. Most people can put on a good show and play the supportive friend for an hour, but almost nobody has the reflexes to fake that very first second. The next time you share good news, don't just look at their smile. Look right at their eyes. Is there a sudden flicker of flatness? Do they go quiet for just a single beat too long before the clapping starts? That tiny, microscopic moment is what we call a biological leak of envy.
And here is a raw truth pulled straight from our source material. Short-term success will very often breed jealousy. It just does. When you suddenly jump ahead, it shocks people. It completely disrupts the established dynamic you had with them. But you absolutely cannot let that stop you, because long-term, consistent excellence, that will eventually turn those exact same doubters into believers. The friction usually lives right there in that short-term shock.
Which brings us to Section 2, the mirror of envy. Why your win feels like a loss to them.
You know, for some people, your growth literally feels like a personal attack. We call this the mirror of envy. When you level up in life, you aren't just changing your own circumstances. You're inadvertently holding up a giant, heavy mirror to theirs. Your win becomes walking, talking proof of the things they just haven't done yet. It's kind of like turning on the bright lights in a really messy room. The light isn't the problem, but suddenly everybody can see the mess. That gap between where you're heading and where they've stayed stagnant creates a resentment that essentially rots from the inside out. But I really want to reassure you here. This is not a personal attack on you. Actually, they don't hate you at all. They hate the stagnant version of themselves that they see reflected in your success.
Section 3, the quiet deflate, attempting to balance the scale.
So, once that envy is triggered, how does it actually show up in their behavior? Well, insecure people will often instinctively try to tear down your accomplishment just to feel equal to you again. Our sources highlight 3 rapid-fire tactical ways people will try to quiet deflate you. First, you tell them you're super excited, and suddenly they transform into certified risk management auditors, listing every single possible reason your new venture is risky. Second, they might just casually drop the name of someone else who did it bigger or better. Or third, and man, this one is classic, they bring up a mistake you made like 2 years ago, something you've already apologized for and totally moved past. These are all highly calculated attempts to force you back into an old script where they felt superior to you. They're just desperately trying to balance the scale.
But hold on. Before we move on, we have to make a really critical distinction. We need to contrast loved ones who are just scared of being left behind with genuine bitter doubters. Our source material points out that sometimes a genuinely good friend isn't actually envious. They're just terrified of losing their connection to you as your life changes. And you know, that requires a bit of grace and empathy on your part. But the bitter doubters, the ones actively deploying those quiet deflation tactics we literally just looked at, yeah, those people should be met with pure, absolute silence.
Section 4, stop playing small, protecting your energy and moving forward. I want you to take a moment to really reflect on this incredibly powerful quote from our sources. Imagine a candle in a dark room. It doesn't apologize for giving light. It just burns. Because so many of us have these good, accommodating hearts, we try to dim our light so that other people don't feel blinded by it. We trick ourselves into thinking, oh, I'm just being humble. But in reality, you are punishing yourself for their insecurity. Please stop doing that. If another candle wants light, it just has to lean into yours. It absolutely does not help a single person in the room for you to put yourself out. So how do we actually handle that weird energy when it inevitably pops up? First, stop playing small. Unapologetically own your wins. Just own them. Second, match energy. If someone goes cold or gets kind of weird when you're winning, let them. Do not chase them down, and whatever you do not overgive to try and fix the tension. Stepping back in this moment isn't you abandoning them, it's a powerful act of self-respect. And finally, step 3, create a mental watch me folder.
So what goes into that folder? Literally every ounce of doubt, every weird look, and all of that sideways energy. Take the whole shebang and file it straight under Watch Me. Use it as raw fuel to sharpen your focus and deepen your drive. Because here is the bottom line. The world needs you fully on fire. It does not need you to be overly manageable, and it sure doesn't need you to be completely agreeable at the expense of your own potential. Which brings us to our final thought for today. Will you dim your light just to keep others comfortable, or will you choose respect? Remember, you were never the problem, and your ambition has always been enough. Don't let someone else's 1 second face dictate the trajectory of your entire life. If this explainer empowered you today, I want to invite you to declare, I choose respect, down in the comments. Keep growing, keep shining, and ask yourself today, whose light are you truly responsible for? Thanks so much for learning with me, and I'll catch you next time.